So now that you understand the costs, let's go into how this actually applies in practice. So the first thing we're going to look at is that common billback method of searching and accessing a document to charge a client. As we mentioned, you would always want to go ahead from your client menu and select your client. These will be pre-built out on your firm IDs. In this instance, we'll just say our client is going to be named none. So we would select that. And now as we research, it will track all of our research behind the scenes with this client ID. So let's say we're going to do a search for search and seizure. We'll start off with a very, very broad search. The only time I ever incur a search charge is when I run a search like this through the red search bar. Now that I'm here, you'll see I have 10,000 plus cases, statutes, secondary materials. So I want to go ahead and filter. Post-search filtering does not count as a new search. This is why we recommend that start broad and then narrow. Because now I can start stacking my terms. I could add warrantless. Maybe also add that this is a issue dealing with a search of a cell phone. I could further add jurisdictions, time periods, publication status. And the benefit is I can work my way down to a reasonable number of cases. But if I ever get to a point where I stack maybe one too many terms, and I end up at 0, it's very easy for me to go ahead and back out without ever incurring an additional charge for my client. So say we've gotten to this point and we've decided that we want to go ahead and view this case. At this point, viewing the search results, none of this has counted as a document access. It is only when we select the document itself to view it that we will ever incur a charge. And one thing to note is now that I have selected this document, I will not incur another charge for 90 days. Documents from the date of your first access for 90 days will not incur an additional bill back to your client. If, for example, I saved it to a folder, it will not bill back to my client for 1 year. This is another reason why it's super important to save things to folders, because it will eliminate billing back to your client every 3 months. Coming back out to our search page, you also can actually save searches to folders. So if you find that you're running a search very frequently, maybe you're stacking additional terms, all of that, you can actually go ahead and add search to folders, select the folder you want to save to, and you actually have the ability to save all of these additional filters you've added and go and rerun that search out of your folder. It's a great idea, again,
Hey, Becca! Come here.
So you can now quickly access that source from your homepage. One final thing to note here is you actually have the ability to directly pull citations, as you may know, including Westlaw-based sites. When you pull a direct document, you skip the search fee and go directly to a document access fee. So in this, I have not actually had a document access or a search fee, only a document access fee. And a little tip or trick here that might actually save you a lot of time as well is you can actually pull a list of citations by separating them with either a semicolon or a comma. Once you've done that and you run your search, it'll actually pull a list of all of those cases that you are looking for, allowing you to select all items on this page and quickly either add them to a folder, print them, or just deliver them in some manner. This is an extremely great time-saving tip. So now that we've seen how billback works in practice, we're going to come out to the front page and talk a little bit about things that can help you exponentially speed up your ability to research, making you more quicker and more effective. The first thing to note is terms and connectors searching. I'm selecting tips here so that I can scroll down and select our search with terms and connectors to view our quick reference card. This will be a card laying out all of the major terms and connectors and giving you examples of how they can be used. One thing to note is that we do recognize all Westlaw specific terms and connectors on Lexis Advance as well. Now, I know many of you will default to natural language. It's what you grew up doing with Google, it's easy. I can tell you now that learning terms and connectors will be the biggest benefit you can have for your legal research for a number of reasons. One, you will find that you are able to access much better search results from the get-go. And two, the most common complaint from large law librarians that I have worked with is that students are unable to do terms and connectors searching. Every year, Lexis actually conducts a study reaching out to hiring and managing partners from large, small, government, etc., asking them about the preparedness of students as they enter into practice. Last year, we were told that 5% of students have the full research capabilities necessary to make money for the firm on day one. In fact, most firms expect to spend anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 prior to you making money back for them. So if you think about it, if you walk in with this major complaint already checked off, you have differentiated yourself and placed yourself in that 5%. The 5% that is much, much, much more likely to actually get an offer. Now, I will send out a video later in the week that will go into much greater detail on terms and connectors, and I highly recommend you take the time to sit down and review it. For now, though, as you're starting to get familiar with it, use your More option and select the live support to actually get a research attorney. So this is a barred United States attorney that works for Lexis, and pose your natural language searches to them asking how they would do it as a terms and connectors. They're more than happy to work that out for you, and it can start to give you ideas of how you would structure these searches. One thing to note, if you ever use the live support, if you ever use the 1-800-45-LEXIS number, if you ever contact me, we don't report this to your employers. You'd be amazed the number of students that are afraid of actually reaching out for help because they think it looks negatively upon them. Firms highly encourage you to use this service. If you are actively learning and trying to better yourself, that's a good sign. In fact, law librarians typically say the students that they remember from internships are the ones that approach them with questions and show that they're trying to improve their researching skills. Now, if you're approaching them with the same question every day, that looks a little bad, but reach out. Use this resources while you have the ability to learn and aren't charging anything to a client to better your researching abilities. So from here, we're going to go ahead and hop over into this Get a Doc Assistance page. Get a Doc Assistance is a great resource if you're unsure of just how to structure a citation. So say, for example, you're dealing with a statutory code in Texas. You know that it's a Texas business issue, but you're not 100% sure which code it is. Here we can actually see a list of all the different Texas codes, and we can quickly come and say, okay, actually this was a Texas business organization issue, so I could select here and directly type in the citation of the code and it will pull it for us, either getting the document or shepherdizing. For cases by party name, this is very helpful and that it will pull cases even if the party isn't the overall named party. So if there's multiple parties to a suit and you don't know the primary named party, you can use this to quickly access that case. And for those of y'all going into litigation that have previously not really done any docket-based researching, using the docket number pull by selecting your specific jurisdiction and typing in your docket number will save you a lot of time. Again, we'll come back out to the research page. And next, we'll take a look at the Explore Content box. Explore Content is what's known as hierarchical researching. It's when you know exactly where you want to go. So say, for example, I'm dealing with a labor and employment issue. I'll come to practice area or industry and select labor and employment. And I just want to get kind of up to speed. I want to find a secondary material that I can use, a treatise, to kind of figure out just the basics on labor and employment. It's an area of law I'm not super familiar with, so I want to read up on it because I know I'm working with a labor and employment attorney this summer. This page will provide us quick links into all the cases, statutes, administrative materials, etc. But here under secondary materials, you'll notice for treatises, practice guides, and jurisprudence, we actually have highlighted 5 specific sources. If I select all, you'll notice this are not the only available sources on Lexis Advanced for labor and employment law. There are actually quite a few of them. What those 5 sources are, though, are the most often accessed and cited sources on Lexis Advanced. So these are the preeminent treatises available to you on Lexis Advanced for labor and employment law. And you'll see Larson's on Employment is considered one of the best treatises out there. It's actually known as a Matthew Binder treatise, the publisher, that is going to be exclusive to Lexis. If you're ever interested in seeing what those exclusive to Lexis Advanced treatises are, you can actually come to Browse, Sources, by Publisher, and select Matthew Binder to see all of those sources such as Collier's on Bankruptcies, Larson's on Employment, etc. You also have the ability through the Explore Content page to select a state. So say we're working specifically in Texas, we could narrow down to Texas. And say we're trying to pull specifically some Texas federal district court cases. When I select down to the specific source, I get to the advanced search pages. This will help me quickly build out a terms and connectors search with just kind of a highlight of the overall connectors. But what's very beneficial to me is I can actually search the specific segments of this document. If you haven't previously dealt with document segment searching, if you think about it, a document is naturally broken down into multiple segments. We'll give you the examples over here on the right-hand side. If you select it, it'll actually open a new page showing it. But when you think about something like a case, there are going to be things like core terms, summary, headnotes. These are great places to search when you're looking for very specific terms that a case needs to rely upon. In our earlier example where we talked about a warrantless search of a cell phone, if our term cell phone is appearing in the summary, it's likely going to be dealing with that issue in depth. Other very beneficial ones that you won't use in school but can come up in practice are attorney and judges. If you think about it, if you can find a case where your opposing attorney has made arguments on the same style, you can get an understanding of the type of arguments they may make. Also, if a judge has previously sat on this type of case, you can see what their typical train of thought is. When motions are filed in this manner, how often are they successful? What type of opinions have this judge written previously about this? Is it split? Does he typically go in one direction? It's a great background and litigation strategy-based tool. You always, too, can access those overall document segments through the advanced search button up here on the top right. And then just finding the overall, for example, if we wanted to search cases as a whole, as opposed to just that small Texas federal, we could do that here as well. On that subject of searching very specific sources, you actually have the ability through the red search bar to do what's known as group searching. If I ever type in all Tex, you can see I can actually quickly add, for example, all Texas federal district courts as a filter just to search within there. Again, we typically recommend you search broad, but if you know specifically where you want to look, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and pre-filter for you. Now, we also have access to what are known as practice centers. Under the Browse button, you'll see practice centers here, and you'll see we have both practice area and industry, so things like corporate M&A, government contracts, healthcare, etc., as well as jurisdiction. What these pages will do is forward face all of the major information on Lexis Advanced for that given area. So here for Texas, we could see we can quickly access Texas case law, statutes and legislation, administrative materials like public utility reports, which are going to be exclusive to Lexis, case-related materials such as briefs, expert witness statements, verdicts and settlements, as well as those top treatises, forms, and jury instructions, things like Dorsanio's, Texas Transactional Guide, etc. We can also quickly link into our practical guidance that I'll show you in a second, as well as narrow down to key topics, link into our law firm memos on your firm IDs, or view Texas news. If you ever find that you are defaulting to these pages over the summer for your research, you can actually, under the actions, make this your start page. The final thing to look at is what's known as Lexis Practice Advisor. For those of y'all that are going into transactional-based work, this is a very, very beneficial site for you. You'll notice we have overall practice areas here, such as Texas business and commercial, that'll go into things like oil and gas, Texas leasing. For here, though, I'm going to go ahead and select real estate. Specifically, we'll say something that might be relevant to those of y'all about to go into summer is you need a subleasing agreement. You'll notice we have a whole list of subtopics within real estate. And towards the bottom, we have this sublease agreement. If we select sublease agreement, we'll be taken to a new page where we can actually access things like practice notes. These are secondary sources written by the attorneys that have drafted our forms for practice advisors, so we could see the due diligence necessary, key issues in drafting and negotiating subleases. But what'll be very helpful to you are these forms. Where you see these expert forms, these are actually forms that have been drafted by attorneys working for Lexis. If you ever want to see more about the information about the author, on the About This document, you can actually see who has drafted these. What's very helpful, though, is we can get a quick form summary, but we can just go through and plug in the information we need. Instead of taking an already drafted form and figuring out what needs to be crossed off or to fill in the blank, or maybe finding a form that has blanks on it, but we need to go through and actually write it out after being printed, we can go ahead and fill in all the relevant information and use Quick Download to actually download this as a PDF. You also, through here, will have access to things known as drafting notes. Drafting notes will give you a quick explanation of the purpose of a section. So if you need to sit down with a partner about a specific form, you can at least have a general understanding of what the purpose of everything is so you know the questions to ask. You also will have access to alternative clauses. Anywhere there's a purple C is an area where there may be an alternate clause that would be used. It'll give you the alternative clause or provision and allow you to add it to your form or add your own specific clause text. Again, when you're sitting down with a partner, you can now ask them, I know in this section there may also be this specific thing that needs to be dealt with. Is that relevant to us now? It's just one way that you can quickly save time instead of having to reinvent the wheel. We'll come back out to research and just take a quick look at how you can access forms on Lexis Advance. Say you need to file a motion for summary judgment. I will do motion within 2, summary judgment, and run that, motion within 2, not motion within sentence. Apologies. Motion within 2 of summary judgment. The reason I use the /2 is it's actually going to look for these two words within 2 words of one another, regardless of direction. So it'll look for motion for summary judgment motion, etc. I will go ahead and hit show more to access the forms tab. And from the Forms tab, I can do some additional filtering. Let's say we're looking specifically for a Texas-based motion for summary judgment. I can select Texas. And then I can even get more granular with the form type. So if I open up the form type, we'll see that I could go ahead and actually access specifically a motion for summary judgment. But one thing to go ahead and note now are these checklists. If you ever have to draft a form, do an interrogatory, sit down for a deposition, come into the forms section and find the respective checklists. So you'll see, for example, preparation and filing of responsive documents for a response to a motion for summary judgment. Say this is the issue we were dealing with. This is going to go ahead and lay out all the information we need. So the step-by-step process of what we have to do, what our relevant sections we must deal with are, and it allows you to make sure that you have covered all your bases. So you don't need to go back and ask for additional questions. If you were doing an interrogatory or deposition, you don't need to recall a specific individual. These will save you a lot of time. So always be sure to double check and see if there's a checklist already drafted for the specific issue you are dealing with. That's all I have for you today. As always, this summer, if you have any questions regarding how to do research, how does Billback work, just anything Lexis in general, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on your law school homepage. You also can always call that 1-800-45-LEXIS number or reach out to whoever your large law or government contact is. Best of luck with your internships or your future careers. Just know we're always here for you.